think we're live. So let's go. Let's get on with it. Good evening, everyone. My name's Eben, and it's my pleasure to be hosting the latest Q&A with the BSC this evening. And I'm very honoured, lucky to be joined by DP David Katznelson and director Peter Hoar to talk about It's a Sin. So evening, guys. Welcome.
Hello.
I say evening. I mean, it's 8. I'm not in the UK. It's sort of lunchtime here. With all that sunlight coming in, it doesn't look at all like 8 p.m. But I guess that's British summer.
Very low. Absolutely. Cool. God, this is coming back out. My back, guys. There it is.
I love it. Beautiful lens flare on the webcam. It's gorgeous. So where are you both at the moment, Peter? Are you at home? Are you what are you
at home
at the moment?
I'm at home in
general,
in the attic, in Hastings, in the south of England, by the seaside, enjoying life.
Excellent. Good. And David, how about yourself?
I am in London, shooting at the moment in London. Park. So I just get a little bit of sunlight still coming in over Hampstead Heath, and so it looks gorgeous at the moment out there. But no seaside.
Lovely. Did you say what you were shooting at the moment? Because I think it broke up at the critical moment.
I am shooting. I'm shooting a thing called Midwich Cuckoos at the moment, which is based in London.
Oh, cool.
That just an hour ago, going over, of course. Last bit of stress to end the day. But all went well and good. I'm nearly done with it.
How many days into the shoot are you, and how many to go?
Well, I only did the first one, doing the first block, and I was meant to finish on Friday, but then we had, as I'm sure many other people have had, a little bit of a COVID incident, so we were stood down for all of last week, bar one day. So we're sort of having to scrabble to get the last few days in the can. So we're shooting yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and there'll be a day that we're going to steal at some point during block 2 time. So we'll see. But it sort of seems to be an ongoing thing, and seems to be growing, this whole COVID thing. So God knows how you take it hour by hour nearly, as in whether you get cases or not. Seems like.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. Well, good luck. I hope it finishes up okay.
Thank you.
And Peter, you're sort of between projects at the moment. You've wrapped post on everything. Yeah.
Yes, I'm resting, as they say at the moment. I'm working on lots of projects, and I'm about to start. I don't even know if I'm allowed to tell anybody. So, but I'm about to start a job in Canada. I don't think the DP has done an awful lot. I think he's quite new, but I'm going to help him as much as I can. And it's going to be fun, and it's sort of based on a computer game. Work out the rest.
Excellent. I think that DP will appreciate your help very much.
Oh, well, of course. So that's not my pleasure.
That sounds great. Good. Okay. Well, let's talk about
the job interview.
I think that the question. A few people have asked this question, and it's an obvious starting point. But how did you both first get involved in a project? I mean, I presume, Peter, you came on before David. So should we start with you, Peter? How did you first come on board?
Yes. So, but both of us. I think it's fair to say, and I think it's okay to say, that both of us were not the original choices. And I came on board 4 weeks into pre-production, 4 weeks out of 10. They had a previous director on board. That relationship didn't work out. So I think I got a call on a Friday from Phil Collinson to say, are you available? Well, I think he already knew that as well, which is good. Are you available, and would you like to do a Russell T Davies 5-parter? And as you can imagine, about 3 seconds later, I said, yes, of course. So he sent me the script and said, look, but it all sounds good, but read the script, tell me if you're interested, and then we'll talk on Monday. I had the interview on Tuesday, and I think I started on the Wednesday.
Wow.
So it was like, because they had lots of wheels in motion, quite a lot of casting done, not all, but quite a lot, but not much of anything else. And that, I think, was part of the problem. They didn't have many, big decisions made. So I did that, made those decisions, and then the previous DP, it didn't work out for him. A lot of personal issues for him, but so he stepped aside, and then I was like, oh my God, who can I find? And I'd never worked with David. I'd known about David's work for a long time, and I know that he is not always available. He's not always, he chooses great work. And I thought, well, I think I've got a great project here. I'll hand over now to David.
Well, it didn't take long for me to decide, once I'd spoken to Phil and Peter, that I wanted to do the job. And of course, it's always a bit strange, I think, as a DP, when you step in instead of somebody else, because you never quite know what you step into and why is it, and all the rest of it. But of course, this was with some personal tragedy, really. So in many ways, I stepped in and was relatively short notice. And I think, as far as I remember, it was either 2 or 3, I think it's 2.5 weeks or something like that, which was not a lot for 5 episodes. A lot of different locations, and obviously because Peter was relatively new as well, there was a lot of catching up to do in terms of locations and just general thinking behind what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. Luana Hansen, who designed it beautifully, had obviously sort of been doing stuff all the way along, but there was still a big void to fill in that sense. So it was pretty speedy entry to the project and hit the ground running, really. I think it's fair to say that I think it was something like 170 different sets or different locations or environments we were going to shoot, which is a lot, and way more than you can possibly manage to see in 2 weeks' time. But I think we had some incredibly long days. We were racing around trying to find all these locations and familiarize ourselves with them and make decisions on them as well.
I guess talking to all the people out there who are in the same boat as us on a regular basis, one advantage of coming in late is you expect it to be like that. And of course the truth is it's actually always like that anyway. So but we both knew that, okay, this is too good an opportunity to miss, but with a lack of preparation, we were going to have to make a lot of decisions along the way. And so we did a lot of that, a lot of late nights, as David said, or early mornings on split days, which I think recce's on split days should be made illegal, but I don't know who to speak to about that. But we had to. There was no other way. And I feel for Luana, because Luana that was one of the big problems. She had so few decisions on which to begin her process. So there was a lot of that happening. And of course, I wanted to make those decisions, but I didn't have David. So I was half making those decisions. And then he came in with a team that he hadn't chosen. I think they were all brilliant, by the way, but he brought Martin, of course. So that was good. Your gaffer, you can talk about Martin.
Yeah, well, I mean, the great thing, and part of the process, which is, of course, very important for DP, is who the team is and so on. And that luckily had been set by the previous DP, and it was a brilliant team, and one of them were absolutely brilliant. The only one we didn't have was, we didn't have the lighting team, really. So I went to a good friend of mine who is sort of slightly best boying and gaffering at the same time. He's been doing a lot of gaffering for me, but otherwise best boys on Danny Boyle films and all sorts of other big jobs. And I asked him whether he wanted to join us on this slightly smaller shoot in Manchester. And after a little bit of back and forth, we managed to make it happen. And he was a great support all the way through, really. And I think actually, in many ways, I think, as I'm sure many other DPs, and including yourself now being away, it's not always nice to be away from home, but it's got advantages in that you go there and you throw yourself into it 100%. And in many ways, it makes life incredibly simple, that you're there and that's what you do. And you don't really care about your own time, whether it's, evenings, mornings, whatever it is, you kind of go for it. And I think having both the gaffer and Peter and I on that kind of work ethic of ethics of working all along and being able to do it all the time was a great advantage, of course, with that little prep time, no family to get back to in the evening or anything like that.
Yeah. Out of interest, did either of you travel back to London weekends at all, whether in prep or during the shoot?
I did.
David managed
Every
a lot.
weekend?
Yes.
I think he did.
God.
I live in Hastings. I got out of London and grateful for it. But so I didn't go home very often because it's just too far. But my husband came up to see me a few times, and I just hung out in Manchester. And actually, I really liked it. I don't know why I said actually, but I did really like it. I used to live in Manchester years and years ago. And I think anytime you've lived somewhere and moved on, I think it always feels like you have to deal with that part of like, oh, I'm going back. Why am I going back? But it was amazing. I had a really great time, and as we've already touched on, an incredible crew, I had been away for so long. It was nice to come back to a British crew and do it on something like this. It was a blessing.
Yeah. And how long so Peter, you had 6 weeks prep, David, you had 3.5-ish. How long was the shoot? So what were your total times in Manchester?
15 weeks, I believe.
15, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 11 before Christmas, 11 before and then 4 after.
Okay.
Which I think was a blessing. I don't think I would have liked to have done 15 weeks straight, but so yeah, that's I think how it broke down. For 5 Channel 4 episodes, so that's like 42 and a half minute durations. But Russell writes a lot and likes to have some choices, as we all do. But so we on average shot about 60 minutes per episode. So we were going for it. Plus, as David said, something like 170 different sets or locations or time shifts, because even if you're in the same place, you still got to wait an hour for the next period to be dressed in. So what do? You go and find something else to do. But so it was busy. It was very busy.
And did the Christmas hiatus, presumably you had 2 weeks, did that give you, that sounds like a gift to me. I mean, that sounds brilliant. Mid-shoot to just have that 2 weeks of reflection. Did you completely down tools, okay, I'm not touching it to send for 2 weeks? Or did you use it to sort of recalibrate a few things and unofficially prep again?
I actually think we completely down tools and didn't actually do anything as far as I remember. Nothing much. I remember that Russell spent a lot of watching all the rushes through and came back and had a lot of new thoughts and thinking and bit of writing and tweets and so on. But other than that, we didn't really recce or do anything else that I think we were as ready as we could be. Really.
And I think for me, I'd never done 5 episodes of anything before. I'd actually always said I wouldn't do it. I told myself that I would turn down jobs like that because I felt like they were slightly, I don't think unfair is the right thing, but I'd heard a lot of stories about people doing it and like either virtually dying by the end of it or just not being as good. I think that's also something to bear in mind, and keeping up the scale and the quality over that period of time is quite hard. And so I was grateful of the break. I remember thinking as it was coming closer to Christmas, I was like, thank God I'm going to be able to stop doing it for 2 weeks. And then when we come back, it's like a tougher, but a blast because it's 4 weeks and it's cold, but who cares? We can do it. So I think that was a good thing. And I think if I ever had any say in the future, I'd do it again. I'd have a break for everybody's sake, even if that was through the year, because I know financially it's never what anyone wants to do, but practically and emotionally and for humane reasons, I think it's a brilliant idea.
I have to say, for me, it also signified holidays and having time off is of course one thing, and regaining energy, and also in terms of light, it was a great marker for me because I think we finished our last day, which was like the 18th of December, doing doing all these shoots, which were totally daylight dependent. And I just remember Manchester, 18th of December, doing these scenes, and one of them was in the big great hall where Stephen Fry picks up Roscoe, who's having an exhibition on different countries and so on, with massive windows and so on. And I banked on us being able to use a lot of daylight as amplifier on, and I think it was at 1 o'clock or something, it pretty much just dropped below any level that was shootable. And so I was like, 22nd of December or 21st of December, the days start to get longer again, and you're just like, yes, that's an extra half an hour shooting time when we come into the new year. That would be like, because we had a lot of daytime stuff, which was slightly tricky at that time.
Yeah, because it can be a gift for night shoots to be able to start a night shoot at sort of 4 p.m, 3 p.m. It can be incredible, but the other way around, I've been there myself, where you're having to light night for day, and it's just madness.
Totally. I mean, on a big location and tight schedule and all the rest, it's hard work, and especially I think when you barely get an exposure. It's magic hour all day long, and you've got 4 hours. And just actually the difference between even London and Manchester is whatever, half an hour, 40 minutes less daylight.
So it
makes a big difference, actually.
I mean, we did have quite a few discussions, and we did get answers which we were grateful for on certain things. Like, for example, the Pink Palace became a set. There was a lot of discussion about it being a set because Russell doesn't like sets. He prefers filming on location for its authenticity. And it was that was a journey, one of the bigger journeys we had, because I also believe in authenticity, and so but I also trusted the set. I'd done a lot of them in the States, and I'd done with money, obviously, which we didn't have. So but with conversations with David and ways of doing it, and Luana was fine. She was good. She was up for it. She just needed to know because she had to build it. So it was like there was a lot of like toing and froing, and of course that was one of the best things, because there was never any call on our resources for daylight, because we were completely in control. I know it sounds an obvious thing to say, but if we were to look back and look at the efficiency of having that set, it is second, it's without question. And we actually did a hospital set in a school, which had a similar problem because there was daylight things there, but David was able to manage to build boxes basically outside of all the existing windows, which was no small thing. They were large constructions, but again, it allowed us to just go, night, day, whenever we wanted. And they were big scenes. They were the emotional heart of the story. So to be able to not worry about something is a bonus. So, I'm sure he'll tell you a lot of other things that did go wrong that I never found out about. But yes.
Well, just so out of interest, because I think the authenticity of a real location is something I completely agree with you on. But just being on the other side of that conversation right now, it's making me think myself why. And I guess my question is, when you were knowing that you prefer practical locations, when it was obvious you had to build a set or you're going to build a set, did you try to put more authenticity into the set? In terms of, let's say, putting ceilings on or not making the rooms too big, or did you try to introduce kind of limitations, I guess I'm asking, into the sets to make them feel more authentic, or not?
I think we.
Or is there something about a real location that? I guess I'm just getting into what it is about a real location that gives that authenticity. I guess that's what I wanted to dig into a bit more.
I don't know did you ever have a conversation, Peter, with Russell about his hatred for sets? I think that was what made us have relatively few sets, that he didn't like that particularly. But I think there's always a thing, especially on budget, on lower budget things, I suppose, that if you don't have the right backing outside the windows, what are you looking out onto, and so on. And I think we ended up with a Roscoe of day and night sites out there which worked a treat. We didn't, as you always end up in I think there was an old school sports hall or something, and the set actually was slightly modified because it was too big for the actual sports hall, so we had to use 2 sports halls, and they of course had a wall in between them, so we had to, the long corridor in the Pink Palace, we had to extend and make overly long because it had to go through this doorway of the existing sports hall into the other sports hall. So there were certain things that became slightly unnatural, but I think worked to our benefit.
Yeah.
And of course, it made it tricky in terms of, you know, you've got these optimal distances from your windows to your backdrops and so on, and they were really quite hard to get right because there's just so limited space, and you also end up against water pipes or you know, sports equipment hanging down from the school ceiling or whatever it was. So it was a bit of a push, and I think it ended up working well. But size-wise, I think we probably made the kitchen and other places where we were going to have parties and scenes with a lot of characters, we made them slightly bigger than we probably would have done normally, I think. But I think it definitely was necessary because we had some walls that couldn't fly, but I think we actually never did it. I don't know about you, Eben, but always, you know, you prepare yourself for all these walls that can fly, but very rarely.
Does anyone ever actually fly a wall?
I know.
Yeah, that's
I know.
But
but unless
it doesn't happen,
really
does it?
it really never.
Yeah.
You want to do it, but then you haven't got time and so on. And then we had ceilings put into a lot of the places because the rooms were relatively big, and we were worried about shooting off and so on. I think I was slightly missing, I suppose, the previses in terms of looking at a set in a 3D model and being able to see when we were going to see the floor looking out of the windows and when we were going to see, you know, off the and where we were going to see ceilings. We never really did that. So it was a little bit of a guesstimate. And I think in retrospect, we'd probably done some of those things slightly differently. But
sure.
As a whole, we had ceilings, and then in the middle, I think there was like 3 or 4 feet around where we had ceilings, and then those soft boxes in the middle to help us out a little bit.
Yeah.
But we also had, you know, the wonderful team in the CG department, VFX department, who did an awful lot of fixes. And yes, we had some world builders. We had sort of extending sets in Manchester to make it look like Streatham and things like that, or the removal of 2020, what was it then? 2019 to make it look like 1985. But also, you know, occasionally we didn't win with those soft boxes, and there's a tiny little bit that creeps in. And I'm always of the opinion, I'm sure most people are, it's like, don't worry about it, just move on, because, you know, I love to push the money down to the end of the shoot. For David to try and have to move that entire thing, that one little tiny transgression is just pointless. So, and they were minor as well. And to say they were minor, they really were, and that's another credit to everybody. Dan Nightingale, our incredible operator, as well. So, you know, we were sort of hemmed in those sets, weren't we? Because they were big, but they weren't there. They're never that big. Plus, you had like 50 people in there, you know, having a party. So we did well.
And do you think, Peter? do you think working with cast is there a difference in a practical location and a build? Does that factor into it in any way at all?
Yes, I think so. I think with my gang, our gang, they had, some of them hadn't experienced any of it before, so I think they actually got more excited by being on a set because it felt real. It felt like a proper job, and they were like, you know, I don't know, it was still a shitty school, but it felt great for them to go through this terrible school and then go, oh my god, this is what you've created. And it was an incredible set. The Pink Palace was an incredible set, and it really gave everyone life. You know, it gave us, it became, as they all should, always, that hero set should become the characters, or a character, you know. So, and it delivered on that. So we were all very happy. But I think, yes, if you can walk into a real building, up real stairs, sit on, well, real chairs, obviously we always do, but all of those things are tangible for an actor, and I think that's important. But you know, we had a very young and inexperienced cast, in part, not all. So we, you know, I think they just took it all on the chin, really. You know, that was the best education they could have. We threw everything at them, and they did incredibly.
Yeah,
I think it's always, there's always pros and cons, isn't there, with sets versus locations. And I think, you know, what I'm doing, the thing I'm doing now is all locations pretty much, and the number of times I curse the fact that one moment you're in a
David,
storm at the minute. And then
David, you never curse. You never curse. Don't say curse.
Pull the, yeah. Well, you have moments where it's just not working for whatever reason, or you set up the lighting for an overcast day, and all of a sudden, as it happens here, you know, the sun comes out and it's all tricky. So I think it's as soon as you're on a set, it does make life a bit more even keeled in some ways. And I think maybe certainly for some of the scenes we did, maybe it was a help to the cast and to everybody else that it was just a bit more, you know, it was less hectic somehow, and you settle into this place, and there are places to go and relax between takes, because some of the takes or the scenes we were shooting were pretty demanding, I think, for the cast in emotional content and so on. So to be able to just take it a bit easy and walk into a corner, you've got to yourself a dark corner on the set is probably a good thing, I would have thought.
And were you able, schedule-wise, to start on location, go into the set, then come back out onto location and back into the set? Because I find there's a kind of cabin fever that can set in if you've been on a set for 5 weeks and you can't wait to get out on the road again. And then you get, you know, like you say, rain and weather and all these things, and you can't wait to get back on the set again. Were you able to do that, to sort of ping pong in and out?
Yeah, I mean, I just realised the light's failing in my world, and I'm getting really, really like grainy. So
more and more
maybe
dramatic.
it just looks,
yeah.
Maybe it looks cool. Maybe it looks cool. Well, we obviously had to wait for our set because it was quite a late decision for a number of reasons. Because some of us weren't sure we wanted it. Some of us weren't sure how big it should be. Some of us weren't sure how much it should cost. You know, we were all coming at it for our own things, our own problems, and then eventually the decision was made, and that gave Luana a certain amount of time. So that's when really we could only go in when it was ready, and they were up against it then. But I think we did it just before Christmas, like the last 3 weeks before Christmas, and then the first week out after. So again, that gave the department some time to come to something they knew after Christmas, sort of fall back into line, and then 3 weeks out on the road for the end. And I think you're right. I think that was a great way of doing it because there is a cabin fever that sets in, and again, it's the same thing. You're not as good. You need to be at the top of your game all the time, and if you know, if there's a way of not letting it drag, then it should be taken. But as I say, we were up against a lot of other things as well, and availability. We lost Ollie in the last week because he had other arrangements, and so therefore that factored into it. And we had our star 3 cast who were only available to us for a certain number of weeks. I think Keely was 2 weeks, Stephen was 4 days, and Neil was 1 week. In fact, that's one of the reasons we had the problem, because Stephen's scene in the corridor full of daylight, he was only available to us that last week before Christmas. So we would have been in that position regardless. But wasn't fun. But you know what? I think we did really well, and they raced through it. It was wonderful to watch. I'm going to switch a light on.
Absolutely. Do you know, and before we move on, I've just had a question come in that I'm going to try and pop in now from Jacob Trupp. Thank you, Jacob. And it says, what would you consider a healthy lifestyle to keep you in an intense industry? I guess it's to do with mental or physical health, like being away on location on a long shoot. Is there anything either of you do to try and keep healthy, whether it be mentally or physically? Or do you just throw yourselves in the deep end and then deal with the consequences later?
I think I'm of that school.
Yeah, me too, actually. I have to say though, if I was giving advice to somebody, I don't know where is it Jacob? I don't know where he is in his career, but if I was giving advice, I'd say do something about it. Do get into a mindset, because I always admire the people I meet and work with who have got that sort of thing worked out, and they I don't know whether it's just exercise or yoga or meditation or something, because I'm incredibly easily distracted. You might even have noticed that, and so it's very hard for me to do those things, and I know that if I did, I'd be better off. So I would advocate the doing of it rather than the not, and I think you've got to get ahead on that sort of thing, because if you say I'll do it when I get there, it will not happen. You've got to prepare yourself for, like, okay, this is going to be my routine. And so Eben, you can help me with this one, because on my next job I will be in Canada with you. So if I don't do my yoga or my stretches, then It's your fault.
Let's do it. Should we have a 6 a.m. call and go for a run around the set or something?
Perfect. Yeah.
It's just never going to happen. But yeah, but I suppose actually, I mean, both of you said, I mean, like David, you were traveling home every weekend, and Peter, you had your husband come to visit. I mean, I suppose that is good for mental health. It might not be good for physical if you're tired and stuff, but you know, that's a thing, I think.
I have to say that Peter for sure is quite good at the healthy lifestyle, in the sense that you know, whenever your husband came to stay, who is a very good chef, he would come home, there would be a 3-course menu laid out on the table. Delicious.
Yes.
There was always vegan food was always a subject of conversation for sure. And you're quite good at switching off, I think is an important thing to be able to do, is that you come home and try not to be emailing and whatever till midnight and whatever else there is to do.
Yeah, I do actually. I have a good knack of switching off, and I watch the opposite thing to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I would watch Alien or likewise whilst I was doing It's a Sin, and obviously won't be watching Alien when I work with you, Eben. I'll be watching. I don't know what should I be watching. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days or something like that. Something. I don't know why, but something that is so far removed from what it is that
the opposite
I'm doing. Because most of it won't really go in anyway, to be fair. I often watch a film after wrap, and then I'll go to bed and think, what was that? What did I just do? But at least it feels like my brain did relax and did calm down.
Yeah. And it strikes me that there's this sort of because of the lack of prep that you both had, it feels to me from the outside like you turned that into a positive, like you turned it into a thing of energy, of you know, let's turn this into, it is what it is, so let's just embrace it. And I just, out of interest, I mean, are you the sort of people, either of you, that do you get to set very early in the morning and then stay a little bit later on wrap, or are you there at 5 to 8 and straight in the car again on wrap?
David, you go first.
We had an advantage. We stayed in the same apartment block and drove in every morning, and so we did have a kind of 20 minutes or whatever it would be chat in the morning, but otherwise, didn't actually. I don't think we came in particularly early, and didn't. I think there was an advantage to. I think also it depends very much on what you're shooting, because for a lot of what we were doing, it was very character led and based, and of course you've got a solid script in your hands and so on, but there were a few scenes which were technically demanding, where I would come in a bit earlier and pre-light or try out things or whatever it might be. But on the whole, it's our decisions on the day were very much informed on the actors and what happened in the scene and so on. So I think you come in with some ideas, and Pete had lots of good ideas he would bring with him in the morning and so on, and I think we then worked from that really in seeing what was going on and really intuitively reading the room with the actors and how to cover different scenes, how to treat each scene differently. So we did make it up on the spot quite a lot, but a few things had to be planned because they were just slightly bigger. But on the whole, that was the approach. I mean, that was of course, things like our little demonstration or riot or whatever we call it scene, shot in Bolton's Crescent with 50 extras and 3 or 4 cameras and a 50-foot technocrane and so on. You have to think a little bit about how you set it up and the floor plan of where you go. But it was not terribly, precise. It's not like it has to be this shot and this shot. It was a fluid process in many ways, I'd say.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'll let you into a secret that I used to be a location manager. It's not a secret actually, because it's on my IMDb, I think. But I will never forget the first day as a paid director when my car arrived at 1 minute past wrap, and I was like, "Oh my God, I can go straight away. This is the best thing that I've ever had in my life." And I think that having been on the set at 4 a.m. and left at 10 p.m. for a number of years, I can't wait to get away. I don't think that's going to leave me, but I don't mean in a horrible way. I just feel like we give a lot when we're there, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I do it on purpose. I love what I do. I give it a lot of energy, and I give people a lot of energy because they deserve it. So I feel like, okay, I'm done, I'm going, and as well. I mean, or added to that, I will come in, you know, not latest possible time, because there's lots of people want to ask me things, but I don't need to be there 2 hours ahead of time. I'm just going to go around in circles. And if you've got the team that you trust, most, if not all, the things can be dealt with. They can. Challenges and intuition. I'd say, rather than making it up on the spot, we used our intuition, and it served us well. And yeah, like you say, maybe we both unknowingly fed into that thing about, well, actually we haven't had much prep, so we have to do it this way, and it was great. It was great, but it has to be a relationship. And I think I didn't know David to work with, but we both worked okay that way. I'm sure David would probably have liked a bit more prep. I'm sure he would have, but whether or not the decisions on the day would have been better, I don't know, because I think we were still open enough to go, oh, that's not right, it's this, now it's this, I can see it, it's something completely different. But we weren't doing anything too technically complicated most of the time. It was drama. It was, you know, so you had to see what it was. You had to wait for that rehearsal to see what it really was, and then go, right, that's it, I know what it is now, I know what to do.
Yeah. So presumably you didn't have enough time to do a full page turn of 5 episodes from start to finish and talk through every scene. Presumably you didn't have that time. So am I right? I mean, I think you both.
We did try it. I think we tried it a couple of times, and I think we got through about 30 pages of episode 1. But
yeah. So did you, in those initial conversations of episode 1, did you start to identify, like, I don't want to say rules, but kind of themes or philosophies or ideas for this is how we're going to approach things in general? And did they stick? Did they evolve? Is that kind of how it works? I'm sort of guessing.
I think it did. With probably the biggest thing technically, I suppose we decided on relatively early on was this whole concept of spherical lenses versus anamorphic lenses, and use both of them, but for different characters. And we definitely had, and in that way the story was split up in you could say in different worlds. You know, there's the young, vibrant world, and then there was the slightly more set, conservative, older world, and those two, we had a distinction in how we were going to shoot them with those lenses. And of course, sometimes there would be the moments or the times where those worlds interact with each other or cross over or whatever, and you have to make a decision on the day of what's going to suit this scene the best. But that was one of the rules we had in trying to decide on what to do. And there was a little bit of handheld work versus, you know, more fluid work on Steadicam or track and dolly and so on. But again, it was assessing slightly what the scene and the room was like to make those decisions. There's no solid rule on that.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think, you know, there's subtle things, but they tell a story, or they I think hopefully they will take the viewer and treat the viewer, inform the viewer as somebody you can, I wouldn't say manipulate with, but help along with the story and set the tone of the different worlds.
I think it did. I think that you know, I love the sort of subtleness of something like that. It was a decision David came up with very early about having a distinct choice to make, just to describe or to feel, rather, not to describe, but to feel the two different worlds. And I do remember on a few occasions we'd stick on the anamorphic and do the old, you know, back at Richie's house or whatever, or Valerie's world or whatever. And we were looking at it going, oh God, they're beautiful, aren't they? Well, shame we can't use that on this scene that's coming up. But we didn't. We stuck to our guns. And yes, actually, one of the most interesting discussions on quite a regular basis was, okay, well, which one is this? Because which world are we in now? And just having that discussion proved to be very fruitful in a lot of ways, because we were discussing what it was for, what it was about, what it should feel like, and so having, you know, I'm not always one for rules at all. Actually, I like to use all the toys, because why not? You know, that's how I think the the best way to tell a story is. I think omission sometimes doesn't allow for that, and can actually draw itself more attention. So if you choose to only shoot something in one way, I think it can draw itself more attention, and therefore the artifice is too strong, whatever. So, you know, I like not to, but I think this was such a subtle choice and a perception rather than anything else. And I think that's what I liked about it.
And I mean, David, obviously short prep again, and you ended up with 2 sets of lenses and sort of philosophies behind that. But in terms of camera testing, did you know, okay, I think we're going to shoot on this camera with these lenses, and then just sort of demonstrate that works? Or did you like really look at different cameras, different lenses, and sort of test?
Again, it was fairly limited the time we had, so that probably played in a little bit. But I think actually quite early on, again, I felt that I just shot parts of a documentary, feature doc, about the Thai divers, or, you know, the boys football team who got stuck in a cave in Thailand and so on.
Wow,
that's a little feature doc that I was doing with Kevin MacDonald, directing it, and we had to go to Thailand and to Australia and various other places and do these incredibly long interview sessions and so on. And back then I tested different cameras for that. And my dad, Anthony Dias, he suggested the Sony, which had just come out, and we had a look at it and really liked it, and it fitted perfectly into that world. And then I kind of fell in love with it at that point, and decided that it would be the right choice again for this for Sim. I think partly different things I was drawn to. I mean, apart from a very pleasing image, I always found the Sony cameras quite tricky and a bit too technical, and too many soft menus and all the rest of it. But finally, there was a camera here where it was all a bit more like an Aries camera, was a bit more simple and an easier interface. But I just thought that the whole way you can use it in terms of ND filters built in, and the fact that you just split it into 2 and you've got a Rialto mode and a conventional mode is a very handy thing. And we used that a lot. So we had 2 cameras. One was a Steadicam camera and main A camera, I suppose you would call it. And then we had a B camera, which was always in Rialto mode and just on a very long base plate and with a little gap between. So when you put a big lens on or whatever, it becomes an incredibly long and slightly ridiculous camera. But at the same time, it really suited me, because it meant that it's a great second camera to have. And with Dan operating the A camera, I very late in the day, when we're about to go for a take, you can just grab the camera, and it's tiny, and you just put it on the cine saddle on the floor or something, and you get an additional shot, which is a slightly unconventional angle from below or wherever it might be, and you can hide it so many places. So that was really a treat, and I really love that about you can do that with the Sony camera. And then of course the ASA settings were a bit of a gift, I think, both for me. I'm not very good at putting in lots of lights, and I always struggle to understand how 20 years ago, shooting with film stock of 100 ASA or whatever, how you would ever get any exposure anywhere, anamorphic lenses. And here it's just a gift that you can crank it up to 2,500. And I think to begin with, I was trying to be disciplined and switch between the 500 and 2,500 and on. But I have to admit that I very, on day 3 or something, we probably ended up on 2,500 ASA, and that was it pretty much all the way through. And actually really liked and embraced the look of it, shooting at an ASA like that. And it just meant that, again, we could make the most of those short days. And if you need the daylight, it just gives you an extra, 20 minutes or something critical at the end of the day. And that is just worth a lot, I think.
Absolutely.
You still get a clean image and a nice image.
And in terms of the look, the really just the aesthetic of the camera and what you ended up with, did you have like a LUT? Did you have on-set grading? How? I mean, because obviously, this is 80s London, and so it's a period piece, or becomes 90s London. I mean, actually, you have a passage of time, don't you? So you've sort of got a 10-year period off the top of my head. And did you decide this is going to evolve, or let's just set a look that feels write for that whole period?
Yeah, there was no lot other than we graded with 709 and really started. That was our starting point, and then we'd desat it a bit, and we'd do some on-set grade and really find the look for each scene. And Ollie Pillon, who was doing who was bidding for us and so on, we found still, he made me stills all the time. We worked on them and kind of got in, as you do when you're shooting. It's a relatively quick process and quick turnover, and not necessarily fine-tuned, but it certainly gave us a very good palette and some very good grades and lots to start out with. And when we got into the grade finally, I wouldn't say there were still reference shots as in where we were going to take it, but it certainly helped a lot having those. But it was nothing was really. We had a very brief lot that we tested, that we set up in the testing room, but as we all know, really a lot works in so many different ways, and you need one for really every single scenario in some ways. So live grade just becomes simpler, and our lot, I think we made it in half an hour in a testing room at no drama, with very little, a redhead and a window or something like that, something totally basic. So it wasn't really gonna stand the test of night, daytime, and magic hour and all the rest of it. So it was very basic. Yeah, of course. Starting point.
Yeah. And was there ever a conversation about this is our 80s, or were you trying to sort of do something different, or to just really honor that time period, or I'm just wondering if there were those conversations, or if you sort of thought, let's just tell the story in the room and deal with that aesthetic later, or did you land on that?
Well, I'd already pitched my version of it, in the sense that I did, yes, it's the 80s, but it had to feel like modern, if that's the right word. It's the telling, the liveliness, the likeness, the language of it, I felt had to not be 80s, obviously. So I'd made a little pitch of that. Channel 4 also very into that. They knew their audience, and they were like, it can't feel weighed down by its period. But I'm terrified of nostalgia, so I was very aware that that's, again, the last thing I wanted to do was to fall into that trap. And it's a honey trap, because it's so beautiful, everything around you, and you're like, oh god, this is so great, let's go to do that, or let's come off that flock wallpaper or whatever. I didn't do that, by the way, but actually one thing that we had on a daily basis, and I do actually appreciate it now, and I did at the time, really, but Luana said to me, I'm going to put way more on the set than you need, and that's for a reason, because I don't want you to have not enough. And so, and Russell was very particular about, well, he always had a look, and that's not being particular, he's entitled to look, but he would say, oh, that's too much, I don't remember it looking like that, I don't believe that. And that's the key thing. He'd often say, I don't believe that a house in this time, or that socioeconomic class, would have one of them or one of them, and there's no point in arguing any of that. You just go, great, let's get rid of it. And then David and I would probably do a little bit of that as well. We'd take a few more posters down, or because it just, there was just it's all about pulling it back to authentic. And I think everyone goes on about less is more, but I think you can't really tell until you're in it. And so I just, I was always aware that I didn't want the period to be leading us. It's just there. It's like oxygen. So it shouldn't be doing any more. But I mean, I actually sat in the edit and put like 20 bloody booming 80s tracks on it, which I hadn't expected to do until I was in the edit. And so people are probably going to say to me, oh right, yeah, so you love it now, you love nostalgia now. And I'm like, well, no, it just worked. It told much more story than it was another layer of storytelling that I could not resist. So
fair enough. Yeah.
But I think also, actually, just to add to that, I think also actually, both Peter and I, and Russell, of course, in particular, Russell had lived through that period, and for him, it was a very personal piece. And so many of the memories were written from things he'd experienced or seen or whatever, and that really informed us. So I think it was never discussed as if I picked up another film or something, or a script from the 80s or something, you're thinking about, oh, should we drain out of color? Or, you know, you could go down the route of, you know, other brilliant pieces of work from that period where it's very monochromatic and bleak in many ways, and not many colors and so on. But actually, I think we slightly went the opposite direction, I think, to make it a bit more life affirming and give it some vibrancy that the period, apart from it being a tragic piece about people dying and being ill and all the rest of it, it was also a period of a lot of fun for a lot of people, including myself and Peter and Russell. That there was a lot of fun enjoying that time, and it shouldn't just be looking like a sort of a deprived 80s drama where it all ages sucked out of it.
Well, I think that came across. I think that was very successful. I mean, there was an awful lot of joy and happiness, and I really felt that, and just as a viewer, it felt present as well. Like you said, I think like sort of were insinuating, it felt like you were in the present in the 80s rather than it being through a nostalgic lens, if that makes sense. Which I thought was great. And I've had a question this is from Sam Spurgeon, DIT, and I think it just leads on from what you were touching on working with Russell there. And he said, given that the material was so personal to the writer, was there anything different about the working relationship with Russell, or to describe his involvement? I mean, was he on set every day, and how did that work with decision making?
I mean, I'd never actually worked with Russell. I'd known him for a number of years. Met him in a nightclub, weirdly, in Manchester, and talked about Doctor Who illegally because he wasn't supposed to tell anybody, and he told me loads of things, and so that was fun. I met him years later for Cucumber, which I didn't get, but he remembered everything that he told me, and he said, I shouldn't have told you this, and he'd been following my career, and it was quite nice to know someone like Russell had followed my career before the American stuff that I've done most recently. So anyway, we then move on to It's a Sin, and so it was lovely to be able to work with him and Phil Collinson and Nicola Schindler. So that was all fine. You know, he knows what he likes and he knows what he wants, but at the same time, we were able to persuade him. We mentioned about the sets. You know, he hated sets because he always felt they were fake, and he doesn't want anything to feel fake. None of us do. I mean, you know, but I think he's more on the front foot with something like that, whereas a lot of other writers or showrunners or whatever might wait till they see it and then go, oh my god, I don't like this. And actually he's way more practical than that. He'll get involved and he'll say, you might as well show me now or talk to me now, because that way we can get this worked out to all of our advantage. And I'm sure working on Doctor Who for those number of years gave him a lot of that, because somebody with a show that massive, someone has to give you answers all the time, otherwise nothing happens. So we always got answers. So actually I love that. I don't mind if it's not the answer I wanted. I just, like all of us, I want to know what matters, why it matters, and I was never short of that. I was never clawing around in the dark for like, oh, why are we doing it like this? This doesn't make any sense. You know, he'd always have a very valid, very clever reason for why he'd done things or why he chose things. But yeah, as I say, I persuaded him of a number of things in the edit as well. I'd say, well, you know, I'd tell him why I'd done something, and he'd go, yeah, that's right, you're right, let's keep it in. And so I think he was incredibly, you know, generous in that respect. But if he really wanted, he told me on week one, I did one shot in slow motion. I can't remember what the numbers were. I don't do numbers, but we did a slow motion shot, and it was a reaction shot. So nothing really moved. And I love those sorts of things because again, it's perception. So it wasn't about someone running or anything. It was Richie's moment when he's told by the lighting guy, just something wrong with your skin. And I just wanted to have a shot in my back pocket that was slightly weird. And so all Ollie did was literally that. He moves like that much, but like 50 frames, it just gave, there was something really interesting. I liked it anyway. Before it even got to the edit, Russell, I can't remember if he phoned me or if he emailed me, but he said, have I told you how much I hate slow motion? And I'm like, no, you haven't. He said, oh, well, I don't, I hate it. It slows everything down. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I literally had no other plans other than that one shot.
Wow,
which was lucky.
But was it in the final cut? I can't even remember.
I think I put it in and then it came out. and then I think I snuck it in, and then it came out. I can't remember, but I don't think it's there. I don't think it's there. And if it is, you can't notice it, so therefore it might as well be there.
Yeah.
But he definitely, I mean, he watches, he wasn't on set very much, but he would watch every single bit of the rushes.
Yes.
and he would feed back to Peter about certain things, about background, about props, about this and that. And
yes.
Same with me, he would feed back on what he liked and didn't like, but in a very good and constructive way, I think. Peter said.
Yeah, I think the journey for me was that I can be, like I'm sure a lot of us can be, you get a little bit protective and a little bit nervous and anxious, you know, because you care about it and you want to do it well, and it's a huge thing to keep going. And I think in the initial weeks, I think I did respond slightly prickly to it, because I felt like it was me, you know, it was like a school report. It was like things that I hadn't done right. But actually, exactly as David said, it wasn't that. It's like he was getting there to tell us straight away, so that we didn't make the mistakes again, or that we could fix them, or because, you know, he'll be there in the edit. And anyway, it's just sensible. It's a sensible way of working. And also a lot of it was praise. So it's fair to say it wasn't all about what we'd done wrong. It was praise as well. So so, you know, and as like I said before, I love knowing something. I hate being in the dark, and that has happened on a number of jobs. So we were never in the dark with Russell. You knew exactly what was going on.
And what about, because he was the writer as well, and you were working with a young cast? I mean, how much improvisation, how much flexibility with dialogue was there?
None really. And no, I'd say it wasn't like there was no flexibility. They just didn't need to be any. I wasn't looking to do anything with that. He would be flexible in the sense that if they had said something slightly different and it was great, he wouldn't have a problem with that. But we didn't really find ourselves in that world, to be honest. Partly because maybe because our actors were younger and they didn't think about, you know, we had a rehearsal week and there was a few questions then about some of the language, partly because it was a period use of a certain phrase or certain words, and they would all be blank faces, like what does this mean? I've never heard of this before. So, you know, the older people in the room had to explain what that was, and they were like, oh right, okay. But yeah, there was a bit of that, but they were very dutiful, but nothing never worked. It wasn't like I was struggling to make anything make sense. So I didn't feel the need to stray in any way. And I don't think Russell would have been happy. So again, I probably thought, well, there's no point. I get this right, because it works. I know it works. So I just need to get it right.
And what about, I'm always interested in like you said, you had a rehearsal week pre-shooting, but then on the day in the room, what was your process for both of you in terms of blocking, in terms of rehearsing? At what point, David, did you come in and talk about shots? Are the actors still there? How did you both work together on rehearsing and blocking individual scenes?
Oh, good question.
Well, I mean, there's never enough time, as we all know. But inevitably, it would be an attempt at getting the actors in as early as possible, which they were mostly, because again, you know, I was trying to instill in them that this is the way it should be, because, as I say, most of them hadn't been on the set before, so I wanted them to realize this is the process we should be doing. But there were times, of course, where it was very difficult when we were doing party scenes and there was all sorts of things going on, and their average age of 20, well, no, a bit more than that, 23. And I didn't want to ever sit on them, because that would be the worst thing I could do. I wanted them to really not notice us. And there's a bit of a fine line with that, because there's obviously got to be a discipline on set, but at the same time, I wanted them to feel like it was always joyful, and you know, they had all the potential they needed, or they could give all the, you know, they could give anything they wanted. They were enabled. So but yeah, there was still a process. We would have them in, we would sometimes read through, sometimes I'd just get straight on it. Russell does lots of small scenes as well, actually, and you know, the advantage for that is it's very clear, everybody understands it on you know, mostly. everyone understands it. So it's a bit like, well, okay, this is what we're doing. And then really it's for David and I to do it the best way it can be. And so I think in that respect as well, it wasn't always, or rather for me, it was always better not to know what was coming, because that way I could do that. If I became too prepped, I felt like it was just a bit stiff. And actually, if Russell's written, he walks to the wardrobe, opens, gets this out, puts it on, and then changes his coat three or four times. I'm like, well, you know, and like a schedule like this, sometimes you have to let it go. You just have to go, right, let's go, bang, change. And sometimes you're like, okay, we've got a few minutes. You just stand there and do the thing, and we'll just move around the room. And David could go like as many places as he could to find the best stuff, and then we'd shoot it. So
I think the tricky thing is always when you've got that many characters. It's always and that you're always underestimated. I think in the schedule, you know, you look at the page count, but I think another thing which is quite often underestimated by first ADs or productions or writers for that matter, as in, well, not necessarily writers, but more people who care about the schedule and the running of the day is what the scene actually contains. And I think the number of characters is always, and especially if they've got speaking parts, it might only be half a page, but as soon as you've got 5-6 people and they all have a line, an awful lot of small looks and glances and this and that, and that always just bumps up the time, and it was a pretty tight schedule, so it's always trying to find a way of covering as many looks in one lighting setup as you can, or pulling focus in a deep 2 or 3 shot or something like that will read and make those small moments count, but yet be relatively quick, because you've a day full of whatever 6-7 small scenes that are all adding up to 4 or 5 pages, whatever it is. And then they've got that number of characters in it.
I was just say the other curse as well of the schedule that says, oh, it's all right, these 3 scenes have got no dialogue, so you can rattle through that. And you're like, okay, so the scene where he dies, I can just rattle through that, can I? And the scene where 3 people, you know, collapse onto a bed in fits of tears, I'll do that in half an hour, shall I? And so on and so on. We've all been there. So, but you know, but to be fair to everybody, we were all up against it. That's just the nature of what that show was. There were lots of scenes, and again, I think I've said this a number of times in other chats as well, but I remember at the time thinking, there's a lot of scenes, there's a lot of locations, a lot of sets. And I know my team was worried, because they were like, how are we going to get all this stuff dressed? How are we going to get it creative? Where's the money coming from? All of those things. And I remember thinking, God, I don't know how we're going to get it all done, but I know that in the edit, I'm going to love it. I'm going to love all of this. It's going to be so rich for it, because, you know, there were some sets we created for like 3 scenes and they were beautiful, but without them, it would have been so sad. It would have been such a different story. And so, you know, we pushed and we pressed and we got it all. And as I say, it's an uphill climb, but I like scripts like that.
Yeah. And David, if I could just, in terms of working quickly and having lots of eye lines and everything we were just talking about, were you trying to light rooms to be as 360 quick as possible? Were you or were you tending to light every shot? I mean, because that's always, there's like a kind of push and pull there that you have to react a lot. And were you able to tweak a lot, or did you have to just go, okay, it's fine, let's shoot, sort of thing?
I think mostly we did light each setup, you know, whether and made it work for whether it's, you know, 2 camera angles that were slightly forward off each other, 45 degrees, one slightly wider, one slightly closer. So no, it was not 360 lit rooms. No. And I think to me, very often, I think if you light too much from the top, unless you've got big sets and you've got a really big source up there, a nice soft source or whatever, I think quite often it can become quite tricky with the toppy lighting, or you know, you get the dark eye or whatever. And so we did bring something in, you know, soft sources that we did move around, and equally the set outside, it was not as we mentioned before, shot or built in a school with absolutely no infrastructure whatsoever. So there was no grid or anywhere we could put lights. The lights, every single light had to be on the floor and wheel around with stands and all the rest of it. So there was a bit of work to be done for each setup. So it wasn't easy and just turn over, shoot whichever direction you want.
Yeah.
I think in some ways, if you line a show up like that, then it can be done, and I'm very happy to do it and so on. But if you want it to be a little bit more than that, then you just have to spend the time, and luckily, we both managed to do that with the schedule, and Peter was patient enough to let it happen.
I mean, I wouldn't have been happy with the result if that's what we'd have done. It's like, it's push and pull. It's like I could have said to David, right, I'm going to shoot. I want to shoot now, whatever, and he would have done something that covered it all, and I would have looked at it and gone, why does it look so shit? And it would be like, because we haven't given it the finesse. And there's a point, I think, as a director, you have to give your team as much as they can have. As if somebody told me years ago, the take is the shortest part of the day. So like, that's my bit, if you like, but I have lots of other things I can do either side of that, like talking to actors or talking to David and getting ahead and thinking about lots of things. And when you're working with a great cast, even an inexperienced one, we didn't have to force a lot out of them. It was because most of it was about joy, and they were brimming with joy because they were having this great experience. So we just captured it. So yeah, I did give David as much as I could, because the results, proved it was worth it. So it's always, I feel like I'm having this little internal dialogue in myself every time. I'm like, oh no, please, let's do it. But I would hate myself if I'd pushed. I'd rather have it inside me than anybody else. So I'll take the brunt.
Fair enough. There's one question that's come in. It's a sort of more generic question, but I think it might be a good time to put it in. It's actually from Anonymous, so thank you, Anonymous. But it's, what advice would you give to an aspiring director graduating from film school? Do you think the advice, if you want to make films, just make films, is still true today? I guess that's to Peter.
That's Peter.
Is it? Okay. I would say
well,
I'd say it's more true. I mean, I don't know that. I mean, I never had this experience. My journey was very different. I didn't get to film school. They wouldn't have me in. I remember being naive and thinking, well, I only live down the road from Beaconsfield, so I'm sure I'm a shoo-in, right? I'm bound to get a place. And then I realized it didn't work like that. And so I didn't get into any film school. I was supposed to go to universities, didn't get the grades. Took a year out, got to a polytechnic and did a degree in media production, which is great but worthless. Anyway, but back then, which wasn't that long ago, but back then I don't think I could have made a short film because of the amount of things and people and time and money it would have taken. I don't think I know people who did, of course they did, but I don't think I had it in me. So I think a lot of filmmakers would have been like I was and thought, well, what shall I do? I'll just get a job. Whereas now you can go out and make it on a phone and there's no excuse. And I know I sound harsh by saying that, but there really isn't. There really isn't an excuse, because lots of people I've talked to will say, yeah, but it doesn't look as good as the Sony Venice or the Arri 65. And I'm like, well, no, it's not going to. But if I want to know about your skill as a storyteller, then it's an irrelevance. It's like, I'll see how good you are at telling a story if you shot it. If you made a flick book, I'd actually be very impressed if you did a flick book. But I think it is definitely as relevant. I always like to trot this story out, which I think was attributed to Robert Rodriguez, who said he was asked the same question at some film school. And he said, the best thing you can do is you can go to a printer's and get a card that says your name and the word director on it. And as soon as you've got that card, then you've started. That's your career. You're done. And I know what he means by that, because I didn't get taught to do it. I was very lucky to get people who believed in me along the way and gave me opportunities and gave me time. And then you just go and do it. I think that's why I'm still instinctive.
And you know what? I think actually I've got on the shoot I'm on at the moment. There's a trainee, not in the camera department, but in another department, who is really interested in cinematography and possibly directing and so on. And during prep, he bought a Super 8 little camera and showed me his films he was shooting the other day. And I think in some ways there's something great about that discipline of a Super 8 camera or something, you know, which is 3 minutes and you literally have to edit. And it's just a brilliant way of seeing, you know, the narrative and which shots they pick and the angles and how to tell a story really in short form. And you know, the more exercise you get and the more you do, the better you get, I suppose.
And I would add to that as well. I would add the discipline of a deadline, because I think one of the great things that TV has taught me is, like we said already, there's never enough time. But because there is a deadline, you have to make choices that are based on the artistry or just smart thinking, not always money and time. So, and I think if I was to ever look back and be shown all my best bits, they'd probably be the things that I did in the last 10 minutes of the day or something like that, because that's how you get to be good at what you do. I think is to be able to make quick decisions. Well, good ones, not just quick ones, but yeah, I would say give yourself a deadline.
I think instinct's a massive thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Which, and quite often, I mean, instinct comes from experience, but it also just comes from that sort of like, I think a big thing for me is I love cinema or I love TV, and I just have my opinion, you know, whatever that's worth. I like certain things, and that instinct of just, this feels wrong, it is something that I always try to sort of listen to. It's sometimes I can't even articulate why. It's like, this just feels wrong, or this feels right. And you just sort of, I think personally, the more you go with that, the more you end up with something kind of personal and it's actually saying something.
Definitely.
And rather than what you should do. Yeah.
I will add to that as well to say that the piece of advice I wish I'd taken on when I was like, you know, coming through the ranks, basically for years, as a director, I used to think that I had to be like someone else. I think I had to think like, I don't know, a David Fincher or whatever, you know, a poor man's David Fincher, obviously very poor. But I used to try and think that I had to be like someone else. And unfortunately, I realized way too late that the reason I got a job is because of me. It's my thoughts that they were interested in, my instincts, my pitch. So trust in all of that. You've got the job. Trust in that voice. Don't second guess it all the time, because that's why you're there. They don't want anybody else's opinion. So, and I think that's what I would tell younger filmmakers is to, you know, maybe they're a bit more arrogant than I was, but I don't know, in a good way. But I used to worry too much about other people's opinions of things, and if it feels right, like you say, it's hard to articulate when you've got no time. So you might as well not bother. Just shoot it and then do something later.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. I suppose slightly more on the cinematography side, but for David, I mean, I have a thing that sort of branches off of this, where sometimes I look at work I did 10 years ago when I didn't really know anything, and it's pure instinct, and there's like a naivety to it. And I actually look at it now and think, God, I don't know if I could do that now. And because I've sort of learned professional stuff, and it kind of makes you sometimes question, like, is everything I've learned better? Or was there like a blissful ignorance to the early stuff?
Yes.
Do you feel the same?
Absolutely. I mean, and I love the fact that you're saying it, because it's been, I wouldn't say bothering me, but it is that kind of thing where you think that actually sometimes learning things also makes you, I don't know whether it's terrified of making mistakes or just knowing or think that you know what things should look like. Because definitely when I look back at some of the early things I did, they're not all successful, far from it, and they're silly mistakes. And when I look at it, I go, oh my God, how could I be so stupid or not know about this or that? But at the same time, there are some really interesting ideas, and I look at them and I go, I wish somehow that the ideas, or being as that, the way I lit that scene back then, if I did that now, it would be a really daring way to go, and it would actually be a real marker rather than a bit more slick and streamlined by American Hollywood, whatever, that you need a fill light and you need to see the eyes and so on. Things like that. The contrast you played with was maybe slightly greater, or certainly you were doing things that worked in a different way. Yes, there was a freshness to it, and I think that's important, and I think that's why maybe you do see some amazing work from new filmmakers. And I think in some ways people have become younger when they get to either become DPs or operators or directors for that matter. Maybe because the medium is more readily available and they can come out and do some exceptional stuff at a younger age than you used to, when you had to work all your way up through the system.
Yeah. Well, I'm conscious of time. I think we've got about sort of 10 more minutes. So we've sort of talked about, both of you and prep, and we've got into the shoot itself. I mean, just to briefly touch on post-production, in terms of the editing process, in terms of grading, in terms of working with Channel 4, possibly HBO, was there anything remarkable about this in post? Anything out of the ordinary? Was it a good process, a long process? Anything post-related you want to talk about just before we wrap up?
Well, grading-wise, if I start with that, or post on the visual side of things, I wouldn't, nearly say of course, but I think we wrapped like a month before the whole pandemic started, and that of course meant that post became tricky, and everything was pushed back and so on. And I ended up, we were meant to grade in whenever it was April at Technicolor with Jodie Davidson, and that of course was pushed back by a few months and whatever. But the difference was, of course, that I wasn't allowed to go in, so it all happened long distance, and I have to say it was actually a surprisingly good process. I know that there's been debates on what technology can do for us and so on, and certainly some of the American jobs I've done in the past where you had to link up with LA graders sitting in London, and you go into Soho and you sit in a suite and you do it long distance and so on. It was with limited success, I would say. But actually, I think somehow now it wasn't totally perfect, but absolutely in terms of the circumstances, it was brilliant sitting at home. I bought a new iPad and had it set up, got sent with the grey card and blue, this and that cards, and had to set it up in terms of contrast and color and so on, remote by Technicolor. And once that was done, Jodie was sat in Soho and I was sat at home. We were just on a constant link talking about the shots, and I was then able to, I think when we graded episode, was it 3 or 4, to actually go in and see it in there at Technicolor, not in the same room as her, but in the room next door, and I was actually really pleasantly surprised. And I think both having the confidence in what she was the results she was getting to, and the way we communicated and collaborated. We hadn't actually worked together before, but there was just an understanding, and she hit the right colors and contrast as perfectly as she possibly could. So I had very, very few changes. I think there was one scene where we'd gone a little bit darker than I thought or wanted to go, and we pulled that back. But other than that, it was pretty much all as intended. The slightly bigger surprise was, or shame, I suppose, was that we were meant to be grading in HDR and couldn't do that, obviously, because of that whole remote thing. And coming in and seeing some of it in HDR was an amazing experience, because all of a sudden I just saw detail I'd never seen, like park hands in some of the party scenes, where we'd be seeing park hands. To me, they were just a red blob and blown out and all the rest of it. All of a sudden you could see the texture inside the lights and things like that was just incredible. So that was the post side of things. But I actually think for me it was a very positive experience, and it meant also it ended up going across the summer holidays, and I ended up being able to sit on summer holidays in Denmark, where I'm from, just sitting there and grading, whereas normally I would have had to stay at home in London and do it there. So it had some flexibility, which was great. And then what about Peter?
Yeah,
same for you, remotes?
Well, absolutely. So I was lucky on a number of counts. One, that I had an incredible editor, Sarah Burton, who I'd worked with before and will always continue to work with again if I can, because even more so now I know that shorthand, about how valuable that is. How I trust her judgment, and she trusts mine, and I can leave. I'm not that director that sits over the shoulder of of an editor and goes, oh, or basically, because I would do that if I did. Yeah. I'd be like,
yeah,
you done that? You doing that now? Or if you finished, no, you haven't done this. Okay, right, fine. Okay, are you doing it now? Okay,
yeah.
So that would be a disaster. And
Yeah.
she's brilliant. And she had Daniel, her assistant. He was incredible too. In fact, I'm trying to think where Daniel ended up. Basically, we all ended up at home. I'm sure. And and I don't even know. A bit like how does electricity work? I've no idea, but it worked, and I never ever felt the slack, and I think that's a testament to everybody and VFX and everybody did so well. But I think we were also lucky that we'd got episode 1 done in person. So the show as it was, I know it constantly changed, but the type of show that it was and what Russell liked or didn't like, we'd got that out. So in a way, I think that was a perfect place to go remote, because we understood what we were doing going forward. So yes, it was great. And then, like David said, I sat at home and got fed beautiful vegan food by my husband, beautiful husband. And we got a dog, which I would never have done if I hadn't been at home. And so there you go.
Oh, wow.
It's a perfect life. Yeah.
Amazing. What sort of dog?
She is a rescue. Adopt, don't shop. She's a rescue from Cyprus. And she's the breed is Cocconi cross. So we don't know what the other bit is, but it's this Greek breed called Cocconi. She's very, very pretty. She's like a Disney dog, I think.
Beautiful.
So,
amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, there's a question. This is from, I think, Jordan Williams. He's got a very good question that I've sort of been saving for the end. So let's do this one now. What has the response been in regards to the social impact of the series, positives and negatives? As the director, does that part of the conversation end at the wrap party, or how do you navigate activism in a commercial space?
Oh, hang on. I mean, well, firstly, there hasn't been a wrap party, so there is obviously.
True. Yeah.
It hasn't ended. I think Russell said this recently. I was doing one of these with Russell, and he was like, "It's just amazing that the conversation is still happening. The conversation is still going on about this show." And he's as honest as any of us about like the surprise. It's always lovely to make a show that people like to watch, or that people watch in enough numbers to guarantee that you've done the job well. But this is another level, and we're all proud and not surprised. I think that's the wrong word, but we're sort of like, I was quite overwhelmed in the very first few weeks because I was getting so many personal messages and of support and life stories really as well, people who were telling me their innermost stories and feeling that the show had given them a new way of thinking, a new way of living with something, and it was incredible, and on a practical level we worked very closely with Terence Higgins Trust, and they were just about to launch their at-home testing service, which they were doing anyway. So, with COVID, of course, it was even more pertinent. But they had like a 3,000% increase in demand for the testing kits after our show.
Wow!
And that sort of thing is life-changing. That's potentially going to save a life or prolong a life, to have a normal, all sorts of things like that are just are amazing. And I think I'm not quite sure what the end of the question was anymore, but if it's got anything to do, I think the great thing about maybe the activism, I remember the word activism, and I don't think we didn't set out to do that. We didn't set out to be that voice. Russell just had stories, very important personal stories about people he knew or friends of friends, and he wanted to do it justice. He wanted to tell the story, to do it justice, to do it well, and not disappoint any of them, because he said in a recent interview that if he had someone said, why, well, I didn't expect it to be so much fun or whatever, and he was like, if I made this sad and boring, my friends would be furious with me. All those that died, they'd be like, how dare you tell our story like that? That's not what we did at all. We had a great time. We had a wonderful time. We loved everything about it. So so I think that's what he did. He just told it from the heart. And when you do a story like that, tell a story like that and tell it. And we all came for Russell, I have to say, we did. I know when his name was mentioned, I couldn't wait. The opportunity to do it, I was just thrilled. And I know that all the cast felt the same way because of other shows he'd made for a queer community. So So we came for him, and he didn't disappoint us with the script, and we just thought, well, let's just do it. We did the same. We said, let's do it justice. Let's do it as well as it needs to be done. And then that's all you need to do sometimes to get people to listen and notice, is just do it well.
Yeah. Well said.
True.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it was in my quick research, it was the most binged show on Channel 4 of all time, I believe.
I think it's also
the first episode.
It's important to point out that one of the other levels of activism we're now involved in is potentially being brought up on a number of occasions to discuss whether Channel 4 should be privatized. So if anybody has anything, if they have a couple of hours spare, then there's a website that you can go on where you can voice your opinion about it, because the wording apparently is so offensive that it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. There's no way they're really allowing any conversation, but they're doing this due diligence thing where they're putting up this document and it says, if you have anything to say about this, please write it. Maybe if they're deluged with opinion, they will change their minds, but I doubt it. But yes,
I think that's a very important point though, because I think actually some of the stories that I've been told, and obviously it's changed massively. I mean, 10 years ago, I think I was mainly doing one-off BBC 90-minute dramas or 1-hour dramas or whatever they were, and then the whole thing of Netflix and HBO and so on have come in, and which is of course great and so on. But I think it's important that both in terms of BBC and Channel 4 that there's content which might not get on other platform to be made with, or they need to be aired. And I think obviously it's showing that a story that might not necessarily have got funding from other broadcasters or streaming services, that actually is being valued and has become a very important series.
And not only was it a very a good series for Channel 4, it made them money, because if they had 22 million views on their all four, then that accounts for they can quantify that the revenue from that, and they have. So they know that it's and that's by making a show that a lot of other networks rejected. So it just goes to show, firstly, nobody knows what they're doing, so you might as well just make the things that you want to make or the stories that you believe in, and that by making an authentic, genuine, heartfelt story, then the audience will come to you. So don't be cynical about it, and let people. Anyway, this isn't going to happen because it's just not. That's the government we've got. I'm sorry to say. Anyway,
we were going to end on such a beautiful high.
Sorry.
You dragged us all down.
But I think well said, and I would encourage people to seek out that link. I presume it's easy to find, Peter. It's Googleable, or
I got it via somebody on Instagram this morning, and I can't. It's not an easy link, no. But I think if you Google in a couple of Googles, and you'll find it. It's not hidden as such. It's just they're not really going out of their way to ask us our opinion. What a surprise!
No.
But yeah, it is there. It does exist.
Okay, well, I think as the BSC, we can find that link and we'll attach it to this video in some way. So, I think that's a good way to end things. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us your evening. Thank you to Audra and Laurie, who's behind the scenes helping. Thanks to all your questions. I've tried to get as many of them in as possible. And that's a lot of thank yous. So
thank you to Eben as well.
Thank you again
for talking to us. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. And good luck on your next ones. Oh, your current one, David, and your next one, Peter. I might see you soon. Yeah.
I might see you soon.
Great.
I'm not sure. I might see you soon.
We'll see.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Excellent.
Bye, everyone.
I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.